Guys, these weapons are some of my favorite Bungie has ever made. From the legendary Witherhoard Lost Signal to the Time-Worn Wayfarer, which is going to be getting a massive buff next week, these truly are some of the most unique weapons Bungie has ever given us. And they're sexy. Today, though, we are going to be looking at the Auto Rifle Veiled Threat. This is a Stasis Rapid-Fire frame. And I've been really interested in this because number one, I love 720s. And number two, it's Stasis, which we don't really have any Stasis auto rifles. I know we got crates and we got Herald C, but I've never been a fan of either one of those. And Veiled Threat here is positioned very nicely to fill that Stasis void, which takes us to the weapon stats. Veiled Threat comes in with a base of 27 range, 52 stability, 42 handling, 49 reload speed, 72 aim assist, 16 zoom, and 20 airborne effectiveness. Comparing this to other currently acquirable 720s, these stats are quite low, literally making it the second worst stat rapid fire behind Dark Designer. Now, of course, it's a craftable weapon. You'll be able to influence the rolls, but keep in mind, in terms of its stats, it's nowhere near the stat monster that Rufus Fury is. Now, despite what may be a setback on the stat side of things, it's the perk combinations that really define the weapon. Let's start with column 3. We've got Strategist, Loose Change, To the Pain, Shoot to Loot, Attrition Orbs, Fragile Focus, and Threat Detector. Then in our fourth column, we have Gutshot Straight, Moving Targets, Collective Action, Surrounded, Encore, Desperate Measures, and Headstone. Now, there are some solid options here, guys, for both PvE and PvP. But let's start with PvE first. One of the first perks I want us to look at is Strategist. Final blows of this weapon generate class ability energy. Activating your class ability briefly improves this weapon's stability. Again, like Pugilist and Demolitionist, kills here will give you 10% class ability energy, and using your class ability will give your weapon increased stability, with the enhanced version netting you 11% per kill. We also have Attrition Orbs, which I know there's like a cult following for Attrition Orbs out there, but dealing sustained damage creates an orb of power. I still personally think this perk needs a buff, because I feel like it takes too long to proc on primary weapons. On my Veiled Threat here with the Pendant Mag, it takes 39 shots to spawn an orb. With the enhanced version, just increasing the amount of super energy that you receive from the orbs that spawn. Again, I'm not saying Attrition Orbs isn't good, but you can easily make orbs with just a Siphon mod. Now, the perk I'm probably going to utilize the most here is actually Shoot to Loot. It's simple. Shooting an orb of power picks it up. Shooting ammo bricks picks it up and automatically reloads all your equipped weapons from reserves. It's a very solid utility perk, guys, especially in in-game content. You've seen it in people when they're doing their solo runs, when they're running and gunning, having a weapon with Shoot to Loot to immediately swap to, or just to have on at all times to top off ammo is really nice. It's a utility perk, and I know it doesn't necessarily feed into the weapon itself, but it does aid you everywhere else. On top of that, it has a very cool interaction with our origin trait, which we'll get into in just a moment. Now, if Shoot to Loot is the perk we like the most in that third column, what do we pair it with in column 4? Well, in terms of damage perks, you've got things like Collective Action, or collecting elemental pickups, or throwing a Strand Tangle grants a stacking period of increased damage. Now, this is going to be a 20% increase in damage for 7 seconds, with additional pickups being able to extend the timer to a maximum of 12 seconds. Now, for the enhanced version, this simply just increases our timer to 8 seconds. Now, elemental pickups includes everything from Fire Sprites to Void Breaches, Stasis Shards, Ionic Traces, Strand Tangles, you name it. Probably the easiest way to keep this perk up is through Stasis Shards here, which is actually really easy to generate. We've got Harvest Aspects, which give us ways to create Stasis Shards on our Stasis subclass, Whisper of Chill, which is a brand new fragment, where Stasis Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create a Stasis Shard. And if you have Frost Armor, Whisper of Chains has a chance to create a Stasis Shard when defeating enemies. On Prismatic, we have things like Facet of Awakening, where rapidly defeating targets with the light or darkness damage or super generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. We even have an artifact mod called Elemental Siphon, where rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. Overall, if you wanted to use collective action, now has actually never been a better time, especially for a stasis weapon. And I would say the uptime is pretty nice here. With that being said though, to get the most out of collection action, you really need to build into creating stasis shards or some other elemental pickup. So if you're not wanting to go that route and you want to stick to something more general, you of course have Desperate Measures. An easier option here, as the perk reads that weapon final blows grant bonus damage. Melee and grenade final blows grant a larger damage bonus that can stack. Now you get ×1 from a weapon kill, and this is a 10% damage buff. ×2 from a melee or grenade final blow, and this is a 20% damage buff. And ×3 from a second melee and grenade final blow, which will give you a 30% damage buff. Now the great thing about this perk is that it can be activated while the weapon is stowed. Weapon final blows will extend the timer at any tier, and then the timer is pretty generous at at 7 seconds, with the enhanced version increasing it to 8 seconds. It's a good perk, guys, and I know it gets really overshadowed by perks like Chaos Reshaped on the raid weapons, but it's still a solid perk. And once you get it going, it's pretty easy to maintain that 30% damage buff, at least for as long as you have enemies around. But the last perk, which is definitely not the least, is of course Headstone. This is probably going to be the top pick for all of us. Precision Final Blows spawn a stasis crystal at the victim's location. Now this spawns a stasis crystal every precision kill, but it does have a small 5-second cooldown if 5 stasis crystals are simultaneously active. Now the shatter damage from stasis crystals received a buff recently, essentially having their damage doubled. And you can increase this even further with stasis fragments like Whisper Fissures, or if you're rocking Prismatic, Facet of Ruin. Both of these increases the damage and size of the bursts when you destroy a stasis crystal or when you defeat a frozen target. Now as for the enhanced version of Headstone, nothing crazy here, guys. You get +5 stability, literally a waste. This is a great perk for all stasis weapons. You've got a lot of synergy with the stasis subclass, and with all the stasis changes in the final shape, this is something I think many players can appreciate. Now I do want to mention though that Headstone doesn't directly synergize with Shoot to Loot, which is unfortunate, but our origin trait, Radiolaria Transposer, does in fact synergize. You see, this trait reads that rapid final blows causes targets to explode into a pool of Radiolarian fluid, and this takes about 3 rapid final blows to spawn this pool, with more powerful combatants spawning them every kill. And the pool itself doesn't do a lot of damage, but it is still a nice origin trait, and you can of course build into it with the artifact mod. But the best thing here is that the Radiolaria pools will proc Shoot to Loot. You can see multiple times in this clip right here that I kill an enemy, they'll drop a brick, and then that pool will spawn and instantly pick it up. Or if the brick is already there close enough to where the pool spawns, that will still pick it up too. Now I know I mentioned that Headstone doesn't proc Shoot to Loot, but a kill from Headstone can proc the origin trait, which will then pick up ammo with Shoot to Loot, which is a very cool loop. This is why for me, Shoot to Loot is easily a top pick in column 3, and one that I would heavily consider, guys, even though it may not be a perk I always choose on my weapons. The synergy it has though with Radiolaria Transposer makes it worth it. And with artifact mods like Logic Reductor, this not only allows you to deal increased damage to Vex with weapons that possess this origin perk, it also extends the duration of the pools themselves, which is a very nice touch here. Now that we've gone over our perks and our origin trait though, what do I believe is the PvE God Roll? Well, column 3, I'm still sticking with Shoot to Loot. Good perk, great utility, synergizes with the origin trait, and there's really nothing else here that I find that desirable. Attrition Orbs is meh. Loose Change and Strategist could also be a play, but everything else, not really into it. With that being said though, the best perks in column 4, for me, is going to be Headstone. And that's just us leaning more and more into the utility of the weapon. Yes, you've got collective action and desperate measures if you absolutely want a damage perk, but the synergy you have with Headstone and Stasis, and even on Prismatic, is just too good. And then when we start to incorporate the artifact mod Creeping Chill into the mix, where Stasis weapon final blows against slowed or frozen targets release a burst that slows, then we get even more synergy. So that's the God Roll for me, guys. Shoot to Loot, Headstone, that right there is a very good utility role that's going to serve you in a lot of ways while also maintaining its lethality. Slap on the origin traits and the buffs that you get with it. Veiled Threat here is going to cook for you inside of PvE. Now guys, as much as I enjoyed it inside of PvE, I think I like it more in PvP. That's not to take away from anything inside of PvE. It's just PvP, this thing shreds. And I know I see the same comment over and over, that the scope is too large. And I will say, considering the frame of the weapon, that is one big scope for such a small weapon. Like, that seems like a scope that would go on maybe a sniper rifle. It literally looks like a Vex head was put on top of this thing. But despite it taking up your entire screen when holding the weapon at your hip, when aiming down sights, it feels good. It lands shot after shot more consecutively than any 720 I have ever played with. And I know a lot of people are not going to believe that, but I believe it is the best rapid-fire auto rifle in the game. But you gotta have the right roll. Now for some numbers on Veiled Threat inside of PvP. Time to kill wise, you're looking at 0.83 seconds. We're talking 9 crits, 2 body on max resilience guardians. From tier 9 to tier 5 resilience, you can actually get the kill in 0.75 seconds and 10 crits. And then from tier 4 resilience and below, you can get the kill in 9 crits, 1 body, 0.75 seconds. Now the damage perks that are presented here aren't really something you're gonna be able to take advantage of. I mean, maybe desperate measures, but in my opinion, it's just not worth it, guys. What you need to focus on with Veiled Threat is locking down your 1v1s. And that is something Veiled Threat is able to pull off. even in its most base form. But guys, I loaded out pretty much max range. I went Hammer Forge, Accurized rounds, a range masterwork, moving target in that 4th column, which again, the enhanced version helps that target acquisition even more. And really the 3rd column was the only one that I had trouble choosing between. You see, I love the perk To the Pain. I think it's a phenomenal perk. You see, simply taking damage while the weapon is equipped with that perk will increase the handling and aim assist until the weapon is stowed. And this can grant you all the way up to 10 stacks. And it's some pretty massive improvements. And the beautiful thing is that you're able to maintain those benefits as long as you don't die and as long as you don't stow the weapon. Here's the downside. The base range on Veiled Threat just isn't good. Even a Hammer Forge Accurized round roll with a range masterwork is still putting me at 28.6 meters. Now granted, this is not that much worse than Rufus, which with that same kind of roll reaches up to 29 meters. But it is something I noticed. I felt its lack of range. And any little bit of damage fall off you start to receive, time to kill values start inching up. And despite how good the weapon may feel, mathematically, when damage fall off really starts to take effect, you're just at too big of a disadvantage, which is why I started leaning toward Fragile Focus. Fragile Focus grants you a plus 20 range bump. Now you're only able to maintain that range bump until your shield is destroyed. But this also increases our range to 32.6 meters, which is incredible on a rapid-fire auto rifle. We don't get that on this archetype. And to me, guys, the Fragile Focus roll with max range and moving targets was by far the best roll that I played with here on Veiled Threat. This is a beautiful feeling auto rifle. Now granted, the moment you lose shield, obviously this drops off. But think about how you approach engagements. I myself am kind of always walking forward toward my enemy, or maybe they're walking toward me. And what I normally find is that Fragile Focus is able to maintain full damage when the gunfight is at its greatest length between myself and my opponent. And that time I have before the shield breaks allows me to take full advantage of that perk. You also have the enhanced version of Fragile Focus, with a bonus returns more quickly once your shield is regenerated to full strength. Essentially, going from a 1 second cooldown to now a 0.5 second cooldown, meaning you're able to jump back into the next gunfight with Fragile Focus ready to go. I enjoy this combination, guys, and I think that is actually the perk combo to go for on this auto rifle. It's not to say that I don't love To the Pain, but I'm trying to find every single way to keep up with hand cannons and other weapons that can easily duel in that 30-meter territory. And we need Fragile Focus to pull that off. Now, recoil direction, I won't lie, guys, it's not the best. 45, although I will say for me, it's still manageable. Yes, you're gonna have some deviation here and there. And no, I really wouldn't even recommend going to Counterbalance mod. I left mine on 45. You can go either Target Adjuster, Icarus Grip, and just let the auto rifle guide you. Yes, its stats are well below weapons like Rufus Fury, but Veiled Threat possesses some weird ability to consistently snag those shots, and it was shredding targets. Now, should you rock something like Gutshot Straight instead of moving targets? Again, I am not a fan of perks that have downsides. Most notably Gutshot Straight, which does increase your body shot damage, but it decreases your target acquisition. Big no bueno for me, guys. However, the enhanced version doesn't hurt your target acquisition as much as the regular version. Still hurts it, but not as much, going from minus 20% auto aim cone size to minus 15%. However, the body shot increase is a higher percentage on weapons like auto rifles, being around 20% versus the 10% that's present on things like SMGs, trace rifles, pulse rifles, and sidearms. Now, what this really means is that Gutshot Straight does allow you to get the kill in 8 crits, 3 body on max resilience guardians in 0.83 seconds. And every resilience level under that offers a little more forgiveness. From tier 9 to tier 7 resilience, you can get the kill in 10 crits. From tier 6 to tier 1, you can get the kill in 9 crits, 1 body. In tier 0, 8 crits and 2 body in 0.75 seconds. So compared to base, you're getting 1 shot moved from a crit to a body shot. Is it worth it though? In my opinion, no. Moving target is needed here. Rufus Fury by default has better aim assist at base than Veiled Threat. Veiled Threat needs moving target more than Rufus needs moving targets, at least from a stat perspective. Personally, I just really like the scope a lot on Veiled Threat despite how big it is, and I do believe it's easier to maintain consecutive crits with Veiled Threat more so than other rapid-fire auto rifles. Overall, guys, I think this is a very solid weapon. Like the other weapons this episode, this auto rifle is one I highly recommend. Let me know in the comments below what you think, guys. Again, we're getting more weapons next week with the launch of Act 2, most notably the Solar Rocket Sidearm, and we'll be reviewing that one as soon as we can. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.